Welcome to Artistacon's featured Artista List Artist of the Week. Got those words mixed up a little bit, but that's okay because it's a mouthful. I am here with Chris Kosakis, and our artist today is Ryan Onorato. This guy is amazing. He does so many cool things. He has the ability to cartoon and design, and he's a typographer. Super humble about it, too, for everything that he can do. And I hear he's a sick surfer. So, everybody, Ryan Onorato and Chris Kosakis, thank you very much.
Welcome. Thanks again for joining us on the second part of this gathering. We were on Facebook Live earlier. Welcome, Ryan. And we are going to kind of rehash some of what we were talking about and go into some new areas. So tell us a little bit about yourself. First off, before he starts, Ryan is a illustrator living here in southern New Jersey. He was the last Artisticon. He conducted a class and was an exhibitor, and is a friend and a colleague. And I'll let him take over from here.
Well, thank you, Chris. Sean, good to be here with you guys again for our second part. As Chris mentioned, I'm from southern New Jersey. I'm a graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, in Baltimore, where I studied illustration. Since I came out of there, I've worn a various number of hats. I've worked in a screen printing studio where I was their pre-press technician, and I ran a press for a little while. Created all the in-house artwork for clients. From that job, I should say, really dictates a lot of my approach to how I create my artwork, the finished products, and the thoughts that I put into it. And then after the screen printing job, I worked as a graphic designer for Pep Boys at their corporate building. During my tenure there, I did a little bit of circular design, printed collateral, direct mail, in-store signage. And after that, I currently am employed with a company that provides VIP experiences for artists and music festivals, which I produce stuff just like I did at Pep Boys there, printed collateral, experiential design, and branding for some of our events as well. So, and like I said, illustration's always been my passion, dear to my heart. So, that's all been going on at the same time. So here we are, happy to talk about some illustration things with you guys.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your influences. We were getting into that in the last session, when you were a child, who influenced you and who influences you now, maybe new artists. So.
Sure. Sorry, you broke up there.
Yeah, I think we all froze for a sec.
Oh, we're back. Well, on the influences note, I did catch that bit. And like we said in the last segment, I grew up learning or realizing pretty early on that I had a little bit of a gift for drawing. When I said I was in kindergarten and drawing things that were just better than my classmates, I kind of realized all right, something's here. And being very young, I, spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and she had a giant, beautiful coffee table book, which I've now inherited, of Norman Rockwell's Saturday Evening Post covers. And I used to flip through that thing, every visit. And I still do. I still dig it out from time to time. I just always loved, with Rockwell, the fact that any image that he would take, it's a full story in and of itself. There's a narrative there, besides just being a beautiful piece to look at. After Rockwell, I think around high school, I got heavily influenced by Gerald Scarfe, who most people know from his work on Pink Floyd The Wall. Mm-hmm. Very loose, gestural, explosively energetic artwork. So I tried my hand at that look for a little while. And then late into high school and I'd say my college years, I really locked into the indie comic scene and really drew a lot of inspiration from artists like Craig Thompson and Jordan Crane, who are still two of my bigger influences, I would say. What I always loved about Jordan Crane's work was, the visual is very, very lighthearted looking and very cartoony and refined, brushwork. And then the subject matter that he portrays is just so deep and emotional. And, it's just a great juxtaposition of subject with that look that he's made for himself. So, I try to draw inspiration from that, and I've honed my look to be what it is today and what's on my website.
Great. All right, let's bring up his first piece of art, Sean. Oh, and I think I don't know if you just mentioned, but he's a graduate of MICA, Maryland Institute College of Art, where he studied illustration, and great school, great art school. And just wanted to throw that in there if he didn't mention it this time. Do we have Boris up there?
Yeah, so this piece is called Boris Come Home. It was a big promotional piece for myself for quite a exhibition that was hosted by the Philadelphia Sketch Club. I believe not last year, but the year before.
Yes.
Ryan, take it back. We had a Skype streaming thing. You logged out for a second there. You glitched out. So just go on back, talk about it real quick.
We're back. Sure. I'm not sure where the last thing I left off before we got.
Just start from the beginning of Boris. Just go ahead and start from the beginning of Boris.
Perfect. So this piece is entitled Boris Comes Home. It's a digital illustration and then went on to become a 2-color screen print. This piece was kind of like what I mentioned with the Jordan Crane thing. You know, it's like kind of like a nice cartoony, fun looking little image. But, at the time I created this, I was feeling kind of lost in my career. My life was a little unsure of direction and I felt alone and isolated.
Didn't you create this last week?
That's
What's that?
I know, I was just making a joke. It fell poorly though. It didn't perform well. I just asked if he created this last week.
Oh.
Right.
Well, I think it is a timely piece for a lot of people out there who are feeling a little overwhelmed by the affairs of the world and what's going on.
Yeah, it holds up. Yeah, but like I said, this piece was definitely a piece where I was feeling a little lonely, and it's kind of trying to put I don't know. I always say I like to have fun. If we're not having fun, what's it all for? Right. So I kind of took this crazy idea that I used to float around in my head, where I said, during the space race when we were sending chimpanzees up into space, I'm like, what if one of them's still up there on the moon? He's running around up there all by himself. So I kind of took that kind of humorous thing about my own place in my life at that time, thinking I'm a lost chimp up on the moon. I can't relate to anything. I don't know what I'm doing, where I'm going. But, so like I said, this piece is, I probably everyone's like, oh, I just thought it was a cute monkey picture. Well, it's that too. And I wanted to send out the disclaimer I did on the last one. I'm not a lonely guy. I'm not a sad guy.
Yes.
So the stars on this I'm going to interrupt here. The stars on this are actually pretty compelling. Talk us a little bit about how you created them, because I wasn't the only person that actually commented on that. I know you had displayed this at Philistration in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Sketch Club, which, by the way, I see we have a couple viewers. If you've never been there and you live in the area, definitely go. It is the oldest operational artist club in the country, with just a huge history, embroiled in the grand Thomas Aiken affair. Well, not the affair, but his affair where he was kicked out of the academy and the sketch club. And, it's just a really cool place. And so, but you were in a really cool show there, which is Philistration, which is a show about illustration. Generally, it features Philadelphia artists, but anybody across the country can enter. And it's such a cool place to have a show. Now,
wasn't that where N.C. Wyeth had his first public show, I believe?
I don't know. I should know that. I used to work at the Brandywine, but
I believe so.
But so you, someone there actually, was this 2 years ago, asked you about the stars, because they felt that the stars were very convincing, and sometimes when you create these star fields, they can look very artificial. How'd you go about it?
Well, it's funny. That's one thing that I know a lot of, I hate to use this word, but, a lot of artists will get lazy with something like that. They'll throw a splash of ink at the page and, there's their 10 stars, and then they just kind of clone it and drag it and copy it around the page. I don't know. Again, maybe a little neurotic on but they're each an individually drawn star in there. They're each a point. There's no copy paste in here.
Photoshop? Manual? You using white ink or?
Yeah, so let me back up. Most of the pieces I approach them, I do pencil and ink on a hard copy Bristol or illustration board. I'm kind of a big dork that way, but I like to have an original artifact of the work. So I scan the ink work in and then do all the color digitally. usually in Illustrator, maybe Photoshop, depending on the finish I want on it. But like I said, having drawing on the screen printing background, a lot of my work, I kind of approach as if it's going to be printed with a limited palette. So, I kind of joke like any of my pieces, I can look at it and say right off the bat, like, oh, that's X amount of colors. Like, I know this piece is too, navy blue and light blue.
Yeah.
Any site, any image on my website, same thing. Like, oh, you throw it up. Hey, Ryan, how many colors? I'll be able to tell you without hesitation. And again, like, I think that's something that having drawn on that screen printing experience, like I use that in my day to day and kind of all my creation. Cause when you go to print, your number of colors ups the price. So, you have to make sure you're using them effectively and, get the most bang for your buck, as they say.
Just
That's
brought
great.
up your website real quick. And so anybody that's watching, it's RyanOnorato.com. 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 So anyways, I know you were just talking about it, so I figured it was a great time to plug it before we moved on to the next piece of artwork.
Okay.
Yeah, I just love your lighting. Like we were talking about this in the last segment of how you use the screen. When you look at your black and white or grayscale composite, really more black and white because you're just using, high contrast. And then to apply the color, we see the saturation of the chroma really popping, and it just gives a whole other feel to the image. But when you see it in a black and white original ink drawing, but it's amazing to see the transition and how these little nuances really add to the overall finished piece. Something I wanted to ask you last time, and I think we had this discussion before, and it's something one of my instructors from University of Arts said many years ago, Tim O'Brien, who's now president of the Society of Illustrators. Somebody in class, we were talking about representational art because he's a realist, and he said, well, that's just a cartoon. He goes, whoa, hold on a second. Even in cartoons, you have to know how to draw well. Somehow there's this notion that cartoonists are not as quote unquote proficient draftsman as someone who would render a portrait or something. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I understand that. I mean, there's certainly, again, like a lot of artists I know and work with, like, I'll tell you they're much better at drawing than I am. The fundamental, core root of it. But I think a lot of, the reason I draw the way I do isn't because I.
Oh, Skype again. Hold on. He's going to come back. He's going to come back.
I feel like I like to.
Ryan, we had a Skype issue.
Had a little
again.
bit of a hiccup.
A little bit of hiccup.
Seconds.
It's always a data. It's okay. You're back. So you were talking about how a lot of the people you're in school with that they were better than you, and then you cut out.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, I was just saying that, a lot of people I've gone to school with and artists I know still, I think that are better draftsmen than me, and that's fine. And I don't, it's not that I can't draw better or that I choose to draw cartoons because it's easier or lazier. It's just, this is the way I've fine-tuned the knowledge I've learned through these traditional methods. And, this is my, my take on it or my vision back to the world. I guess you can counter that argument with a lot of times they say you have to learn the rules before you break them. So in a way, like, cartoonists just breaking these rules because they draw whatever. I'm like, yeah, but still, like, and I know they say it a lot about comic artists too, is like, you still have to know how to draw everything. I mean, even in that image we just had up with the crowd, there's a lot of things that are representational, like the camera, the guitar, the patch on his coat. I mean, there's just like things that you still have to know how to do that. Like, so I don't know. I feel like it's more of like a style thing.
I think so. I think I would, yeah. And if I misled you, I didn't mean like one is a better drawer than another. I think I was saying more along the lines that I think cartoonists, as much as a realistic illustrator or any type of painter, still needs to know composition, design, layout of a page. These are all important components because anybody, if you have drawing ability, can sit there and do a portrait of a flat, just a quick snapshot, but that's really not designing an illustration. You're in here composing things. So, I think, there's all levels of proficiency in draftsmanship, but it's also what you're focused on in terms of your genre. And in cartooning, you can see highly rendered images and ones that are more basic, but I think it's more of a storytelling and the narrative that is more important. I mean, if you look, like you said, you love Calvin and Hobbes. I mean, they're very simplistic style of cartooning, but
You
you
think
do see a
so?
lot of artists.
I don't know, man.
I think so.
I think we'd have to have a debate on that. And I'm the
Well, I'm
traditional
saying
painter
that
here.
I wouldn't say that I'm like along the lines of Peanuts. I'm saying they're not highly rendered images in like in an animation show. So they're strip type images, and he does get into a lot of detail and all. But I think the more important is his way of storytelling, using these characters not only in his dialogue, because he wrote the dialogue, but the way he incorporates the images and the dynamic views, like yours. I feel that's something where successful cartoonists are really interesting, is that they explore and go out the boundary of just the left to right. Like I call it the Flintstones slide rule. It's like these characters run left to right, like different images and things like that.
Real quick, I just want to jump onto what Chris was saying there before. A couple things. One, historically, if we look at where the term cartoon comes from, it comes from the, there's a lot of history regarding traditional painting, but the concept from the French schools, and that is the cartoon, which is one of the steps of painting, right? So you have the drawing, the cartoon of the drawing, the ébauche, right? And you have a first pass, second pass, and then a final pass, or however many passes you need to just get to the level of finish. And so it's interesting that you might hear an argument that, cartooning isn't as you don't have to have the same level of skill, when it directly relates to the painting process, at least in the traditional academic way. I had something else to add to there, but I'm going to turn it back to Ryan because this is his podcast, or what is this anyways? Is this a streamcast? What is this? I don't know.
Streamcast, yeah. Bunch of guys talking on video.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ryan. Let's get back to this. Well, let's talk about this piece that's up. Like, can you bring up the black and white, Sean, like you did before?
Yeah. So we're going to jump over to Photoshop here. And the reason we're going to jump over to Photoshop is in the previous...
You mentioned the actual
program. No, copyright violation, which I'm sure there's other ones. But we had spoken about how, despite the fact that this is relatively all within the same value range, with the exception of the blacks, you still know that the magenta is a light, and that there's that's a secondary light, and then you have the primary light on the figure of the musician, and that's the light blue. What's really interesting about this, though, is the idea that even though the magenta reads as light, when I turn it to black and white, because we were talking about this, so I pulled up Photoshop and I really wanted to see. Actually, let me go ahead and transition right now. Bear with me 1 second. Photoshop. All right, so here we are. We're in Photoshop now. And if I click, like, say, a hue saturation adjustment layer, right, we can pop it over to black and white. And all of a sudden, we're looking at this. And what's really super cool here is, despite the fact that the dark purple blue in the crowd is lighter than the magenta, and despite the fact that it doesn't really matter as far as the figure goes, because the light blue is lighter. We have the situation where the darker magenta is reading as a light source, which completely throws the whole idea of form lighting out the window, right? So light is supposed to be lighter than shadow, and that's kind of one of the basic rules in traditional painting, is this idea that the darks in your shadows are never as light as the darks in your lights. I'm sorry, the lights in your shadows are never as dark or as light as the darks in your lights. There we go. Sorry, guys. I apologize if I confused you. But here you are turning it on its head. You're breaking the rules. So you must have known them. And one of the reasons this works, right, is because what you've done is you're exciting the eyes, right? You're exciting the cones in the eyes, and you're pushing the chroma to such a level that it appears to be lighter. And that happens a lot when you're painting high chroma objects. People often perceive high chroma objects as being lighter than what they really are. And so they end up making it chalky when it comes time to mix the painting. And you have to teach people a little bit about that. But anyways, yeah, this is really cool because the lights are darker than the lights, but yet it still looks like light. You've blown my mind, Ryan. You've blown my mind.
It's that there's an exercise you can do that's on Facebook where you actually the colors invert it tricks your brain into thinking that the darker is light, the light is dark. Yeah, same type of thing. Yeah.
Well, I love it. I love it. And
Yeah,
I
it's a
love the
great piece.
design.
All of it.
Go ahead.
Do you ever switch the colors up in like your studies? Like you say, well, I used these two colors, but then I used green and yellow in another piece just to see what it looked like.
Yeah, this piece, this one I came into from the start. I knew I wanted to use these colors, but it's pretty frequent that while I'm in here, I'm like, you know what? Instead of that cyan, let me try a lime green. Right. It's just kind of, just like you said, just to see. But like I said, there's just something about like this group of colors here that I use that like I just gravitated toward. That like super saturated, almost neon look. I know, again, thinking of it from a screen printing perspective, I know that's going to make a great print when pulled. So, I kind of knew that like, not to downplay it, but like almost that it was a safe combo. I can't say that I thought ahead the way like Sean showed that grayscale value thing. I wish I could say I did, but I did not. Yeah, like this is just one that I don't know. I just kind of had the colors in my mind before I went into it, and that's how most of my pieces are. Like I said, I'll start with the ink work, but while I'm doing the ink work, I'm already kind of trying to get the wheels turning as far as what kind of color pairings I'm going to use with the piece. And just to point out, most of my work, as you saw on my websites, limited palette, and I tend to work that way as much as I can. I don't know if I could tell you the last time I produced a piece that was more than 8 colors, but they exist, just not very frequently.
Do we have another piece we can bring up?
I'm going to bring up actually a piece right now that garnered a lot of critical acclaim. I know you were up for a couple of awards in Baltimore. It was help me out here. What's the award they give out there at the Baltimore Comic-Con? Or at least you were in the running as a nominee. But anyways, maybe that's it. So it's Pizza Tree, which is an awesome book that you illustrated. And I think this is also a good segue into your lettering, because I know you hand lettered this by hand. Like you literally wrote it out on lined paper, and then you went in and then you lettered it again, which is insane. But I think the results speak for itself.
I was laughing.
Oh, froze up a
Skype.
little bit.
Skype. Hold on, Ryan. Hold on. Almost back. Skype is still being stubborn.
There you go.
Oh, hold it. Oh. Huh?
Yep, your video is not unfrozen now. Okay.
All right, you're back. You're back. Hooray. Welcome back for the 4th time.
I was having a conversation with Chris a while ago. Actually, let me just rehash it here, but it's just a weird personal obsession of mine that I see so much artwork that I just think is a beautiful piece of artwork, and then they turn around and slap some font on it that's just a system loaded font, and I'm like, it just kills the piece. I'm like, look, I'm not saying all artists have great handwriting, but I feel like you've come so far in making this, like in this example here, like I drew the image first, obviously, and then the Pizza Tree lockup I had drawn by hand as well, and at that point I'm kind of like, well, why stop there? Like let's letter the tagline at the top and everyone's name, and I just feel like because maybe it's not the best typography or the best hand lettering out there, but it's still the artist's hand doing the work, and I think that that just that keeps that piece cohesive and tied together. As far as lettering the book, yeah, that was crazy. I don't know what I was thinking, but same deal. I got all my artwork in there, and I'm like, well, I did this, so why not have my hand lettering in there? I might as well. And like I said, I think at the end result paid off. It just ties the whole piece together. The artwork's by the same artist, and rather the lettering is by the same artist, and just I don't know. I feel like I said, just brings the piece home.
Why letter it all out in long form like that? Why not just go ahead and draw it into the word balloons, and then just ink over that?
Well, I would say normally I do work that way. This project was kind of an anomaly for me in the sense that I got the script that was basically just more or less a shot list of saying what was on the page. And the writer, Mark Polton, who I worked with on this, he actually wrote the story around the artwork, or rather the dialogue, I should say, around the artwork.
That's what they call the Marvel method in comics, right? Yeah, where they give you the concept and then the artist builds the images around that. And we have Ryan. There he is. You're frozen for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little weird freeze frame there. Yeah, but like I said, I just wasn't used to working that way. So had I had that all ahead of time, yes, I would have probably just drawn the word balloons right into the artwork as I went. So doing it that way was a little longer than I'm used to, but yeah, you're right, Sean. I basically wrote it all out in Bristol, scanned it in, and plopped it in.
Great. Wonderful. Let's bring up the Wierd Al piece. Let's do the
Jump the
Avett
gun.
Brothers. Actually,
Jump the
we didn't do
gun.
that
We're bringing
one.
up the Avett Brothers?
Yes.
I don't know who this is, but maybe I'll go listen to him now.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about this. Was, I think, for your company and a promotional poster, right?
Yeah, this one, this is just a personal piece of mine.
Oh, okay.
Guilty fan art. You know, I'd gotten into them a little late. I mean, they've been around for a while, but
What style of music?
I would say, I don't want to mislabel them. Let's say Americana, folk.
Folk, okay, like Mumford and Sons, or like not quite that.
Yeah, maybe a little more country-ish, but
Country, okay.
In a good way. Like I hate to like generalize it and say alternative, but
Right.
worth a
No, I
listen.
understand. Sure.
Go check them out. But this is one of the cool things that I said, you know, with my current job working in the music industry, that I probably wouldn't have come across them.
Right.
But they were one of our partners that we work with, and usually when we have a partner, as we call them, that I don't know, I go check them out and, you know, listen to these guys and fell in love with it. I just think that they have some great lyrics, some great writing.
Are they are they known in the music industry, or are they
yeah,
Oh,
they're
really?
a big deal now, yeah. And they have there's actually a great documentary about them on HBO.
Oh.
Kind of tells a bit of their story, but really just like great artists, really great down to earth people. And I kind of
you know, showing my age here, not keeping up with music.
I do it all the time. I mean, that's what I said. I'm kind of fortunate to work in the industry I do, because I'd probably still be listening to the things I listened to in high school, which I'm not saying that's a problem, but, you know, I used to tease my dad about the very same thing, and yeah, here I am doing it. So, but no, like I said, this is just kind of a piece to say thank you to those guys, you know, for doing what they do. And I'm like, hey, here's what I do. And I threw it up on my Instagram. I ran this as a 2-color screen print, the brown and the gold color. The fans loved it. I mean, it wasn't an official piece for them, but I mean, the fans scooped it up, and I got contacted by one of their fan groups, and they actually had asked if they could produce this as stickers.
Oh,
They sent out some mails, Avett mail, they call it, to all their people that are in the group. And, you know, from that, I got an envelope full of stickers and all kind of little goodies that people handmade. And it was just a beautiful thing. I think it's like, you know, they have a great community, and like I said, Wierd Brothers. Check them out if you're not familiar with them.
And I'm assuming they play cello, bass, banjo. Is that a banjo?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they introduce a lot of unique instruments into their forte. Do they? Do people open for them, or do they open for people? If they're so like, who do they tour with usually?
No, they're them now.
Okay.
They're definitely their big thing now.
Would they be like on the Country Music Awards or like Grammys? Like, are they like that mainstream?
Again, like I don't know if necessarily that genre, but yeah, they're headlining festivals.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know who is mainstream? Help
Tell
me
us.
out. I was hoping that would be a good segue to the next piece of art, because it seemed to work
Yes.
perfectly.
Yes.
Apparently, I should
Wierd
just
Al.
not talk on this stream at all, ever. Wierd Al. Wierd Al is mainstream.
And there we go. We have the strings attached tour. Sorry, I'm flubbing myself. Which came out. The initial launch was June 5th, and this was the initial poster. And you said 63 different other artists did a poster for this?
There was this piece I got contracted to do through my full-time job. Wierd Al's another one of the partners we work with, and the Strings Attached tour, they had 63 dates, and rather than having one tour poster that ran for the entire run of the show, they had a different poster for each and every date of the tour. So there might not have been 63 artists, but there were, because a couple artists took on maybe up to 5 dates. I took on 2 myself. But there was a collection, I would say, of at least 20 artists that, produced multiple images for this tour. I was fortunate enough to get the first tour date, so this was kind of the kickoff to the whole series.
Where did they actually play? New York or Philly? Or where was their launch? LA? When he started, where did he perform that first show?
This one was in Florida, I believe. Yeah, Clearwater,
really?
Florida.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But
yeah,
toured the whole U.S. or okay?
Yeah, it was a whole domestic tour.
I remember hearing about it, but I didn't see where he was touring. It was just part of the U.S. or both national, international. But I actually saw him play in a lineup. I can't remember the name of the show. This was back in the 90s, and he was really funny. He was really good entertainer. But so get back to the piece. Let's look at the you had said the original idea in the last segment. The original idea was kind of scrapped at the last minute because of Michael Jackson's scenario of him doing the Fat video, and they didn't want any. I guess the association between Michael Jackson might, cause an issue. So tell us a little bit about that and this piece, how it came about.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, I always like to have a hard copy piece of artwork, and the original concept for the idea, which it's still prevalent here, but they wanted him to be a parade balloon, and it was originally based on the music video for Fat. So, which was a spoof of Michael Jackson's song. So in that video, he's wearing the leather get up with the buckles and everything. And, like I was saying, we were down to maybe 2 days before this thing was ready to go to press, and I sent it off for approval. And our project manager, our liaison, comes back and he kind of says, hey, we might have to change this. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, like, what kind of changes are we talking about? And they were saying, well, how hard would it be to replace Al? Because, we don't want to have this associated with everything going on right now in the media with Michael Jackson. So, could you swap the styling of him to, look more like he did in the video Tacky? So if you haven't seen the Tacky video for Wierd Al, check it out, because this is basically his outfit from that. And that also warranted a whole color shift on the piece, because I think I had initially done it in maybe like a blue and red. And, the Tacky video is a lot of green, a lot of purple and pink. So we had to recolor the piece as well, which, again, like I said earlier, thank God for the digital age, because it made it a lot easier to manage.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my friend Illustrator has the recolor tool, which we employed heavily on this piece.
So by when you're doing by hand, we know you're using pencil and inks. Now, if you're doing digitally, are you using are you using the vector tool or using the blob? Like, how are you drawing the figure when you're doing it?
When I move into Illustrator, I use the blob brush tool, which I know some people love, some people hate.
Yeah.
I've never used it. I'm going to try.
Oh, we lost you there, Sean. What was that?
Oh, no, I said I've never used the blob brush tool. I really probably should try it.
It's definitely a tool that you need to have some kind of tablet or a Cintiq to use, because, with the mouse, it just doesn't translate. So, because it is a pressure-sensitive piece.
So it's basically it's like a freehand tool that is vectorized, right? So it's allowing you to be more naturalistic.
Yeah. And it's got settings where, it'll clean up your work if you want. I usually turn that off, because sometimes I think it overcompensates, and then a line you drew doesn't look right or it doesn't do what you wanted it to, especially around curves. So, like I said, it takes a little practice to get used to it, but definitely something worth exploring, I think, if you're, taking a cartoony approach to your artwork. And, we're doing a lot of like solid color stuff like I do.
Right. And here's another example of how he created the typeface above, incorporated into the artwork, which, it lends greatly to the aesthetic of the piece. And, it's just an interesting additional ability. I mean, I think that just, knowing that about you, for a new potential client, that's great to know. Going back to art school, I was just curious. What did you think of your experience there? Would you suggest art school today? I know we talk about this often through these interviews, that there's no one path for everybody. Everybody is different. Some people are self-taught. Some of it's combination. Some people learn online, through mentorship programs, tutorials, things like that. How do you foresee? Well, not how do you foresee? How do you look back on your art school career? Would you go back again as a student, or would you follow a different path? What do you feel?
No, I still think that I owe everything that's been a success to me to art school. I mean,
And we froze.
biggest takeaway was, did I freeze again?
Yeah.
Just for like 3 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying that I think my biggest takeaway from art school coming out of it was the fact of how to accept and respond to criticism. I know that's one thing a lot of art students struggle with, and thankfully I did not. A lot of kids come as the big fish in the little pond analogy, and that was definitely me. I mean, I didn't have a lot of artists in my high school graduating class. We had maybe 3 or 4. But my school was tiny. I think the graduating class was 200 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I got to MICA, and suddenly everyone around me is as good, if not better. That was kind of a wake up call. Like, oh wow, like, did I make the right decision? But you find your way, and I think that's the one thing I would say to students either in art school or going into art school. Stay open, take it all in, and learn to constructively accept criticism, because you're there to grow. And, as an artist, even as a human being, when you stop learning, you're stagnating,
right.
You gotta stay fresh. So,
and you're constantly learning. I mean, I know you well enough to know you're constantly, taking info in and looking at new things. I think that's for anybody.
Absolutely.
And we all take in new artists every day, new influences. I mean, there's many artists I'm finding out, through the 40s and 50s illustrators. I've heard the names, but never really seen their work, and I'm just enamored. It was like, how did these people just never made it on the radar now? It's like, you see a lot of the big names, but I'm like, geez, I got to go back and do a little more research here myself.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's art history. I mean, there's always been pockets of really competent artists working in a given region. Obviously, regions were a little bit more isolated historically, but they were always working, and they were really, really good. One guy that many people have never heard of, for instance, would be like Jacob Jordan's. Right? No one knows who he is. He's a contemporary of Rembrandt, and his work was solid. I mean, he was just really, really good. And we could show a whole bunch of guys like that. Another guy that it isn't brought up much, but, probably, in my opinion, was one of the top players in the Hudson School, or at least the offshoots of, was William Trost Richards. That guy does not get any love, right? When you hear about the River School, you hear about Bierstadt and who else? Durand. Probably said that name wrong. And
Morant? Was it Thomas?
Well, there's Thomas Moran, but he was, I think he was more of an outlier. He kind of had his own philosophies, and, he wasn't part of the academic sort of group that existed. I mean, he was still grouped into that, but he was also kind of an illustrator. A lot of stuff that he did, right, was created to go into print, and was used a lot by various publications, as well as for the creation of the national park system, which is very interesting. A whole nother topic. But anyways, I feel like guys like that just never ever get credit, or they're just not as well known. But man, you go look at William Trost Richards, man, and I got to be honest with you, I think he puts a smackdown on just about everybody. I like him more than I like Bierstadt, for sure. Ashby Durand, all those guys. He's just really, really good. So this idea that there's these little pockets of artists working everywhere and they're all very competent, they're all over the place. And they've been that way since the very beginning of history. And I think one of the cool things that we do here is, and I'm just beginning to get long-winded again, is that maybe we have an opportunity to feature artists that you wouldn't necessarily hear of, right? If you haven't bought Pizza Tree, maybe you live on the West Coast, so you're not familiar with Ryan's work. This is a great opportunity for you to get to know Ryan's work, and maybe his style and the genres that he works in resonates with somebody out there, and then they buy a lot of awesome merchandise. Hint, hint. there's a really great
Or
opportunity.
another freelance project. They're looking for a certain look, and his look fits the bill.
Ryan, by the way, is as professional as they come when it comes to freelance. I wish I was a quarter of professional as Ryan is. He's always on time, his act's together.
He's
tight. He's tight.
And do you have any? This is more of like a artist tip. Do you have a tip for an artist, like coming out of school? Like, what would you suggest? Like, I know you kind of landed into jobs, but someone say maybe who, or even now because of the situation we're in, they're coming out of college at a time when they don't know what the heck's going to happen. It's going to be a tough scenario. So we're kind of all in the same boat together. But what got you through the first couple of years? Just, was it perseverance? Was it a combination of family support? Like, what did you feel was what kept you motivated?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like, yes, of course, I had a very supportive family. But I want to say that one of the things, like, when you get out, you have to keep creating. It's, I think a lot of art school grads kind of maybe fall into the position I did, where, I came out of school with these grand plans, and then I was baffled when the phone wasn't ringing. Like, why aren't people calling me? What's going on? And, you got to treat yourself as a business. You got to market yourself. And, I think it's a little easier nowadays with social media. I mean, Instagram didn't exist when, I was in school. Facebook was just kind of getting started then. I'm putting the date on myself now, but nonetheless, it wasn't really used as a marketing tool as it is today.
Right.
So I feel like it's, the only thing we had back then was a website, and hopefully you had some good keywords on it, because, it was harder to push. But yeah, I would say, just keep creating and keep after it, because, and take all the jobs you can. I mean, even if they're little, I don't know, $75 for a local newspaper illustration, well, at least you're getting out there, and you're still getting paid for your work. It's not just the, I know it's a debate for another day, but the whole paid and experience thing that everyone always goes on about.
Exposure bucks.
Yeah.
Everybody loves exposure bucks.
Yeah. I mean, don't insult yourself to the point of where free is free, but if you're getting paid something and you feel, okay, I'll weigh this against the fact that it's going to put a piece in my portfolio that might be strong, and then, that's determined after the piece is finished, but don't sell yourself short either. We always say that. But starting out, you might have to take smaller commissions, and unfortunately the rates through the years for illustrators haven't really changed with the rise of living, but there are opportunities, and they're all different types of companies. So yeah, absolutely. Keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no. Well, like I said, I guess the one thing I held myself to, and I would suggest this to all my fellow artists out there, is, there comes a time where, the student loans are about to start, and, mom and dad are saying, well, you got to get something, you got to get work somewhere. So I always made it a point to try to make sure whatever artwork I took, whatever job I took on was still an art-related position. Whether it was, like I said, I worked at the screen shop, was my first thing. Now, I didn't have a printmaking background from school, but I learned, and that was, a great thing. I had enough chops to get in the door, and, like I said, once you get that job, go into sponge mode and, learn everything you can. Like I said, every job that I've had, that's kind of the thing. It's like, all right, well, what can I learn here? And you learn that and you grow. And just to kick back to the idea of the student loans, and, you talk about like artist inspiration, and I always laugh because I quote Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock when the piano player neighbor is playing the piano, and Grace Kelly says, how does one get inspiration to write a song like that? And Jimmy Stewart's character counters with, well, his inspiration comes in the form of a landlady once a month.
This is very true.
But yeah, I always laugh because I always thought that, like, I could relate to that as an artist. And, like I said, I always, you have my full-time job, whether it was the screen printing shop or, like I said, now being a creative manager. That was my Bruce Wayne life, and then my illustration was my Batman life. So it's kind of like, if you need to find a full-time job, take on something that's going to keep your passion alive too.
Right. And that's great with the screen printing background. You brought it into your illustration. You learned the color process in that job, which translated into your future illustrations. It's it's great. I mean, your work is just top notch and it's consistent. And you definitely have a signature style. And like Sean said, if you work with Ryan, he is always meets a deadline, gives you lots of options, and very professional, very professional. So, yeah, anybody out there wants to buy prints, we have his website, ryanonorato.com.
Let's
and
bring it
also,
up. Let's bring up his website. Let's take a quick look at it real quick. I mean, let's plug you as often as we can.
as well as commissions and freelance assignments.
All right, so I have the website up, and we are looking at it. Ryan Onorato, Illustrator. So you have a store? Oh, let's go to the store. Oh, Pizza Tree's on there. If you have kids, that's a good buy. I bought it for my daughter's a teenager, so not really her style. But Ryan did donate them to a local school or district that I work for, and they were huge. They loved them. They had one for the high school, and then one for the middle school. High school one, not really the age demographic, but the middle school one, yep, very much they like it quite a bit. I don't even know if it's still there. It might have disappeared. Someone liked it so much. But anyways, we have, what's this? Below the approach lights. So that's pretty cool. This is wow, that's a fun illustration.
That was actually the first graphic novel I had. I mean, it's a self-published piece. There might only be 2 or 3 of them left.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can make it so there's none left.
Yeah. But yeah, that one I would say that's kind of more of like a teen read. Plus, there's a little bit of language in that one. Not horrible language, but language. So yeah, we'll give that 13 plus on that one.
Okay. A shadow named Sophia. No matter the distance. Yep, about a cat in the shadow. Your design work is phenomenal, Ryan. Really, you're thinking about the design of everything, and I think sometimes that can be something that people overlook. But all the good artists do excellent design work, and you are definitely up there in terms of using design to your benefit.
Well, thank you.
And sometimes even here's his children's book, Little Viking, he did for a client, but sometimes less is more, and I think in your work I see that a lot. But sometimes it's simply stated, not too much busyness going on. You bring it down to a simplistic breakdown of design, and I think it's very powerful.
This book is a departure
especially
for you too, by the way.
Storytelling.
This is such a departure, the Little Viking. I'm actually going to go over to the Etsy store. Once again, another shameless plug. So we're here on the Etsy store, and it's etsy.com. Shop the Little Viking book. But what's really interesting about this is just how, this is there's some stylistic similarities. There's that Ryan knows. But, you're not using a lot of line in this. You're using texture and shape, value, and color. So why the shift in style? Like, what brought that about?
That one was fun. That one was, gosh, it's funny. They just put this out, but oddly enough, I'd done the illustration work probably a couple years ago now.
That's cool.
This was actually a client ask. This started off as it was a friend of a friend kind of thing, and they liked the style, my usual style. But we're like, oh, can we do something a little more like? Have you ever worked a little more painterly? I'm like, well, I tend not to do it, but kind of like one of these things. Like, oh, since I like you guys, I'll do it for you. But no, I think it was kind of fun because it kind of kept me fresh. Like you said, I don't usually work this way, but yeah, this is work that I did almost exclusively in Photoshop, which it's kind of a stretch for me. This is all digital, by the way. There is no hard copy, like I was saying for myself on these. But the client on this one gave me kind of a whole bunch of inspiration they picked. And I should back up. These clients are both designers full time, so which was kind of nice working with them because a lot of the lingo we were throwing back and forth we understood. They pulled together mood boards of like styles they liked and illustrators they liked, and kind of said like, oh, can you kind of cater to this a little bit? And I said, like you mentioned, like there's still a little bit of my style there too, but definitely a different look. And like I said, not something I wouldn't do again, but it's just certainly not like the other, I would say, more personal narrative pieces on my website are. But yeah, so far everyone seems to really enjoy that book. It seems to be getting a lot of positive feedback, so I'm They were happy with
seascape,
it, so I'm happy with it.
that seascape illustration, that thing's amazing. I mean, it's good.
Thank
It's really, really good.
Now, did you do original drawings hand by hand, or everything comped out in the computer?
No, this one was all digital, computer through and through. They had, like I said, they were designers, so they kind of gave me a rough storyboard drawing of like kind of what they were after, and then like, kind of take this and run with it. So a lot of what I did was pretty close to their, storyboards, we'll call them.
Right.
But it was still, things were changed here and there to kind of push it, like, perspective or something, like to kind of push it in a more children's book friendly kind of way.
Yeah.
Was it difficult working for designers in terms of, I mean, it sounds to me like they were pretty specific in the things and the changes that they wanted. At least that's how I interpreted what you just described. So, I mean, did you find that, difficult? Did you find that easy? Did you find it refreshing? Did you find it frustrating? I guess I'm trying to ask you to badmouth your employer, so maybe don't do that. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm just interested.
A lot of my illustrator friends have the same question. Like, well, is it a nightmare working with someone who wants it so specific? And again, like, I think because I work as a designer full time, I'm like, no, I kind of understand what they're after. And, their feedback, because they're designers, was perfect. There was no, well, we don't like this, but we don't know why. They were like, well, we don't like this because the color's not what we're feeling.
Yeah, that's so good, too, when that happens.
But, it's a little too cool. Wonderful. The direction was great. And I don't think any of them, I would say, like, maybe went through, like, a second revision at most, because, we were kind of all keyed in. And I think that's what was kind of nice about having, like I said, the mood board and exploratory stuff they had provided me beforehand. It's kind of like reined me in, like, I'm not guessing, a style that they're after. So I think I want to say maybe started with the cover was the first image I did for them, and they were like, okay, yeah, that's it. That's the look. So, and that might have been like maybe like a 3-rounder on that. But so we did that. Like, all the interior spreads were maybe 2-3 rounds most. And the round, like, when I say round, it wasn't like a repaint. It was, oh, that's great. Let's edit it. Throw another tree in here, or there's some visual tension here, or something like that. So, no, it was great working with them.
Nice.
Great.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing.
Well, I think we covered quite a bit, and
your head's cut off,
really
Chris. Come on.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Come. There we go. Nice.
Okay. I was stretching there for a second. We really learned a lot about you today and your work, and we appreciate you joining us. And anybody watching, this is the Artista stream, part of the Artista List venture, a subsidiary of Artista Con and the Artista Foundation. Any artists?
Is there a theme
out there
here, Chris? Do we have a theme?
Huh?
Is there a theme?
Do we have a theme?
Are we hitting that theme on? Are we hitting that nail on the head enough?
Well, let's say anybody wants to submit that's an artist looking for additional revenue stream. We are accepting writers, artists, editors, animators, sculptors, toy designers, you name it. Submit your work on the submission form on artistacon.org. You'll see the Artista list, and it's free. We don't take a commission charge of any kind. We give you a little space, portfolio section, links you back to your own marketing tools, and we can bring you on for an interview and get your name out there more so than you're already doing. So in these unprecedented times, a little more exposure is a lot of help. So and thanks again, Ron. Go ahead.
Regardless, it's just kind of fun. Come on here,
it is
talk
fun.
A little bit, talk some art. Yeah. We all love it, and if we're all sort of sequestered away, what better thing to do than to talk about art with some art nerds? Because
if you have a Kickstarter launching, we're actually going to have John Sidoridis on again with John Shindahede from the Art Order. We're going to do a little Kickstarter party before the launch of their Kickstarter, and anything we can help to gain more supporters on your Kickstarters, Indiegogos, whatever crowdfunding platform. Any type of ideas you might have, suggest to us. We're looking into various types of online content, since right now we can't have a physical Artisticon like we did last year. But we're doing our little part to help out in any way we can, and that we're trying to support our community, the artists of all types and creators. So that's our goal.
Ryan, last words. We will not
Yeah.
interrupt. Go ahead.
That's
Website,
for-
plug, Etsy store. Like, what do you have?
Words of wisdom. Oh, he has 7 cats. That's what he was going to tell us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my wife works as a vet tech, and they started coming home and never stopped. Well, they did. They stopped at 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, think. Oh, everybody.
Stay safe, everyone. That's it. Keep learning.
All right. Hey, look,
Thank
draw
you.
every day. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for your patience and support. We'll talk to you all later. Everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye and have a happy, safe 4th of July, everyone.
All right. Goodbye.
Keep social distancing and wear a mask.